Welcome back, y'all. We are back talking to the SPongello case about little Peter, who was traumatized during this interviewing process, and we discussed the effects of that interview. And now I'd really like to get to the point. Miss Bertha Livingston is here with us. I traveled all the way from, where did you say you're from?
Lawrence, Kansas.
Oh, Lawrence. Yes. And she is going to talk with us tonight. Now, I just think this is a very prevalent issue in this case. Now, Peter, he was subject to a lot of background information as well as kind of the effects of knowledge on this case. And I'd like you to lead us through this. And I'd just like to know if there was, if post-event information can completely replace Peter's memory for this event. He was subject to paper.
That's a very good question, Nancy, that many experts ask. And actually, with my research, post-event information, I don't think it completely replaced Peter's memory for the central information of the event because he was able to consistently report his description of the murderer. However, post-event information seemed to influence his report for the small details, which could be explained by a source monitoring problem.
And I do agree with that. I do agree. I think that the way Peter brings up different details as they go along, that's definitely something that could have been influenced by the media or perhaps the papers as well.
Exactly.
And I want to know, why is Peter able to recall more details over time, and how accurate is he in this recollection?
Well, Nancy, like as you said, exposure to media reports might have led Peter to remember things that he forgot to mention earlier, and family discussion and community discussion can have the same effect. But as his reports become more detailed over time, the accuracy of his reports become questionable.
And that is something, as an expert on knowledge, I've looked into this and I've done some background research, and I really think that his prior knowledge as well is something that can influence what he really pays attention to as this is going on in this event. Can he really pay attention to certain aspects and recall them later? And that really does question his ability. Is Peter telling the truth? Is he lying? We will find out as this case goes along. Yes. And specifically, how accurate is Peter's memory for the argument on the drugs?
The argument about drugs? Well, since Peter mentioned several times that he was unaware of what the argument was about, one explanation could be that the argument over drugs may have been due to a stereotype induction after the arrest of the suspect.
And that's something I do have to agree with, too. Mario McGinty is actually the suspect in this case, known drug dealer in Peter's neighborhood, and I think it's just so prevalent that if Peter had encountered him in a different situation, and he could have associated him with this murder had he not even seen his face as well. I do think, in a 6-year-old having knowledge on drugs, I just don't, unless Peter's just living out, over the river, he's not going to be too knowledgeable about crank and meth and all these sorts of drugs, I don't think, and I just think that is an excellent point to be made. And I'd just like to know, how can these central events information be influenced by post-event information?
Well, post-event information can affect a child's memory for central information of the event more easily than it can adults. And research about this topic has been done. I don't have a really good pause.
Sorry about that, y'all. That was Ray in the back. He's messing with the sound system and just cut out lots of weird noise that's going on back there. Anyways, we are back here with Bertha Livingston, and she was explaining to us here about this case and the effects of prior knowledge. And now I don't know as much about the knowledge system, so I'd like you to explain how this knowledge system works. And I understand that it can influence the credibility of the testimony of the young boy, Peter, in this case.
Exactly. Peter's knowledge of the crime, the victim, the murderer, the crime scene, and all other aspects that can influence Peter's memory for the event that happened 4 years prior when Peter was merely 6 years old. Knowledge is commonly referred to as a double-edged sword. While it serves many positive functions in facilitating memory, it can also be the key element that contributes to memory distortions as well.
I do see, and yes, I'd like to point that out, that I think is very prevalent, that Peter, he jumped on this Mario McGinty, who just happens to be a drug dealer, sweep him off the streets, and just for the mere fact that he's selling crank, he may not have even committed this murder, and that may have been what Peter has made an association with here, is drugs and murder. You put them together and you get drugs and murder. And you know, just going through this testimony here, I think that, you know, Peter has been subject to a lot of false inclinations here that could really lead us to some and as we were saying, all in all, it just seems very difficult to prove here for sure if Peter's memory is a solidified fact due to the notion of the double-edged sword, of the knowledge, and the interviewer bias, and all the other information. In many cases, it seems that Peter's knowledge has lent to these abilities to solidify his memory, while in others it may have acted as a teratogen that has misshaped and molded his memories to fit other schemas, and you know, therefore prosecutors would have to be very accurate with what they're piecing together here. We'd have to be very careful with this SPongello case, and our hearts do go out to Peter tonight as he is prepping for court. And, you know. We'll get back to you on this case, and we will fill you in and let you know just how this turns out. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Nancy Grace. I'd like to thank Bertha Livingston here for all she has told us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Nancy.
And we'll see you next Monday right here.